Have you ever wondered how a single city on the Tiber River managed to build one of the largest and longest-lasting empires in history? Was it just brilliant generals and iron discipline? Or was there something else? The secret, my friends, lies in their gear. The Romans weren't just soldiers. They were engineers, innovators, and masters of military technology. They didn't always invent the weapons they used, but they perfected them, creating tools of conquest so advanced, so clever, they didn't just win battles. They rewrote the rules of warfare forever. Today, we're marching back in time to uncover 12 Roman weapons that were absolute game changers. Forget what you think you know, because some of these are going to blow your mind. Let's start with a classic, the one you probably picture when you think of a Roman soldier, the gladius. This short, double-edged sword wasn't for flashy dueling. It was a brutal, efficient killing machine designed for close-quarters combat. Its genius was its simplicity and purpose. While Jehovah's enemies were swinging long, heavy swords, the Roman legionary, protected by his massive shield, would get in close and deliver a quick, deadly thrust. The gladius was designed for stabbing, not slashing, targeting vital organs with minimal effort. It was a weapon born from the brutal reality of the battlefield, turning the dense, chaotic crush of ancient combat into a Roman advantage. Quick, lethal, and easy to use, the gladius allowed legions to carve their way through enemy formations with terrifying efficiency. Next, let's talk about the shield that made the gladius so effective, the scutum. This wasn't just a piece of defensive wood. The scutum was a curved, rectangular shield, large enough to cover a soldier from shoulder to knee. Its curved shape deflected blows and missiles, while its sheer size created a walking wall. But here's the clever part. In the center was a large metal boss, the umbo. This wasn't just for reinforcement. In a push, a legionary could punch forward with the umbo, staggering an opponent and creating an opening for a gladius thrust. The scutum was both a shield and a weapon, the cornerstone of Roman tactical formations like the legendary testudo, or tortoise formation, where soldiers would overlap their shields to create an almost impenetrable shell against arrows and other projectiles. It was a mobile fortress, embodying the Roman emphasis on discipline, protection, and aggressive defense. Of course, you can't talk about Roman weapons without mentioning the pilum. This was the Roman javelin, but with a brilliant, nasty twist. A pilum had a long, thin iron shank behind its piercing tip, which was attached to a wooden shaft. When thrown, the pilum had a range of about 30 meters. Upon impact, the soft iron shank was designed to bend. This had three incredible effects. First, if it hit an enemy shield, it was almost impossible to pull out quickly, weighing the shield down and making it useless. The enemy would have to discard his primary defense. Second, because it bent, the enemy couldn't just pick it up and throw it back. And third, if it hit a person, the bending shank caused a horrific, ragged wound. The pilum wasn't just a throwing spear. It was a tactical device designed to break enemy formations and morale before the real fight even began. Let's move from the individual soldier to the big guns of the Roman army, their artillery. First up is the ballista. Think of it as a giant, high-precision crossbow. Powered by twisted ropes, pallius, or animal sinew, the ballista could hurl large darts or stone balls over hundreds of meters with terrifying accuracy. These weren't just for sieges. The Romans developed smaller, more mobile versions called ballistae, which were mounted on carts and could be used on the open battlefield. Imagine facing a disciplined line of infantry, only to have massive armor-piercing bolts raining down on you from a distance. The ballista gave the Romans long-range dominance, allowing them to soften up enemy positions, break up cavalry charges, and terrorize their opponents long before the infantry lines ever clashed. Similar to the ballista, but for a different purpose, was the onager. Named after the wild ass for its powerful kick, the onager was a type of catapult that used a single arm, powered by torsion, to hurl massive stones in a high arc. This was the Romans' heavy hitter, their bunker buster. While the ballista was for precision, the onager was for demolition. It could smash through walls, shatter fortifications, and crush enemy formations under a hail of rock. During a siege, the relentless morale-shattering thud of an onager's projectiles hitting the walls day and night was a psychological weapon just as much as a physical one. It was a blunt instrument of destruction that proved Roman engineering could be just as deadly as Roman steel. Now for a weapon that proves Roman ingenuity knew no bounds, the corvus. This was a naval weapon, and it was pure genius. Early on, Rome was not a great naval power. They were farmers and soldiers, not sailors. When they faced the master sailors of Carthage, they needed an edge, so they invented the corvus, or crow. It was a massive 11-meter-long boarding bridge with a heavy spike on the end. It was mounted on the bow of a Roman ship and could be raised and swiveled. When an enemy ship got close, the Romans would drop the corvus. The spike would slam into the enemy's deck, locking the two ships together. Suddenly, the naval battle was no longer about ramming and sailing skill. It was a land battle at sea. The superior Roman legionaries would swarm across the bridge and do what they did best: fight hand to hand. The corvus single-handedly turned Rome's greatest weakness at sea into their greatest strength. Let's look at the soldier's protection, which was a weapon in itself. The lorica segmentata. This was the iconic segmented plate armor of the legionary. Made of overlapping iron strips fastened with leather straps, it offered excellent protection against cuts and thrusts. But its cleverness was in its design. Being made of segments, it was incredibly flexible, allowing a soldier to bend, march, and fight without being overly restricted. It could also be mass-produced relatively easily and repaired in the field by replacing individual plates. Compared to chainmail or lorica hamata, which the Romans also used, the segmentata offered better protection against piercing and blunt force trauma. It was the perfect balance of protection, flexibility, and logistics, a true symbol of Roman pragmatism. Another, often overlooked weapon was the pugio. This was the Roman military dagger. While the gladius was the primary weapon, every soldier carried a pugio. It was a personal sidearm, a last-ditch weapon for when you lost your sword or were grappled. But it was also a utility tool, used for everything from preparing food to cutting rope. Its broad, leaf-shaped blade was excellent for stabbing in the tightest of clinches. The presence of the pugio meant that a Roman soldier was never truly unarmed. It was a testament to the Roman belief in preparedness and the grim reality that a battle could devolve into a desperate, personal struggle for survival at any moment. Back to ranged weapons, let's discuss the plumbata, or martio barbulus, which translates to little thorns of Mars. These were lead-weighted darts, about the size of a large arrow, often carried clipped to the inside of a soldier's shield. They could be thrown overhand or underhand, and while their range wasn't as great as a pilum, they were devastating in large numbers. Imagine a Roman line advancing. Just before they charge, hundreds of soldiers unleash a volley of these heavy, stable darts. They were easy to throw, required little training, and could easily puncture shields and armor at close range. They were a surprise volley, a final shower of thorns to disorganize the enemy moments before the brutal impact of shield and sword. Let's not forget the tools that won sieges, the siege tower. The Romans didn't invent the siege tower, but they perfected it into a multi-story mobile fortress. These were enormous wooden structures, often taller than the walls they were attacking, wheeled forward by men or oxen. They were covered in animal hides, resistant to fire, and bristled with their own artillery. The top level had a drawbridge that could be dropped onto the enemy ramparts, allowing legionaries to pour directly onto the walls. A siege tower neutralized the advantage of high-ground defeatos by a defender, bringing the fight to them on equal terms. It was a monstrous, terrifying symbol of Roman determination and engineering might, a machine that could not be stopped. Equally important in a siege was the Ares, or the battering ram. Again, an ancient concept, but the Romans made it an art form. A Roman Ares wasn't just a big log, it was a massive iron-tipped beam suspended by chains or ropes within a reinforced wheeled structure called a tortoise. This protected the soldiers swinging the ram from enemy arrows and projectiles. By suspending the beam, the Romans used the principle of the pendulum, allowing a small number of men to generate incredible momentum and destructive force. A large Ares, rhythmically slamming against a gate or wall for hours, was a relentless force that could bring down even to the strongest fortifications. Finally, we have a weapon that's more of a trap: the caltrop. A caltrop is a simple device made of 4 iron spikes, arranged so that no matter how it lands, one spike always points straight up. The Romans would scatter thousands of these on the battlefield, especially to disrupt enemy cavalry. A horse stepping on a caltrop would be instantly lamed, throwing its rider and causing chaos in the charging ranks. They were also used to protect the flanks of a Roman camp or to channel enemy infantry into a prepared killing zone. It's a simple, low-tech but deviously clever weapon. The caltrop proves that for the Romans, warfare wasn't just about direct confrontation. It was about controlling the battlefield and using every dirty trick in the book to gain an advantage. From the personal dagger to the towering siege engine, each of these weapons showcases the Roman mindset. They were pragmatic, innovative, and ruthless. They understood that victory was won not just with courage, but with superior technology, tactics, and an unshakable belief in their own engineering prowess. These weren't just tools of war, they were the very instruments that built an empire. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back to ancient Rome. If you enjoyed this deep dive into military history, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content. And let me know in the comments which of these Roman weapons you think was the most clever. Until next time, stay curious.